We're going to be looking again at the book of Proverbs. And the book of Proverbs, as we've seen, is about the importance of wisdom and how to get it. The importance of wisdom and how to get it. One way, though, to understand wisdom is to contrast it with its opposite, foolishness, or the fool, right? So in tonight's lesson, we're going to take a look at what Proverbs says about the fool, right? About the fool. The first thing I want to say, though, before we dig into the details, is that in the Bible, and in Proverbs in particular, foolishness and the fool don't have anything directly to do with a person's intelligence. It's not about intelligence. Often in English today, we use the word fool, right? When we use that word, when we call a person a fool, we are usually remarking on that person's intelligence, right? When we use that word in English. It's a kind of equivalent to calling somebody a moron, right? You ever done that? I've been known to use that word a few times, right? May have to repent of that once in a while. So, although sometimes it's true, right? But we often use the word fool as kind of a synonym for moron. We might also use words like silly or goofy, right, as a synonym for fool. But in Scripture, foolishness is a moral category. You may have heard this before. It's a moral category. It has to do not with a person's IQ so much as his moral character. The fool, as we will see, is a person who, because of some moral shortcomings, fails to appreciate the value of wisdom and thus refuses to pursue it. With this in mind, let's begin by looking first at the actual word fool. It shows up a lot. That word in English shows up a lot in the book of Proverbs. Although I should tell you that there's actually 3 different Hebrew words that are almost always translated fool or foolishness in the book of Proverbs. But their meaning is all virtually the same. They're so close in their meaning and they overlap in their meaning that they're just really synonyms. And I'm going to treat them that way. I'm just going to look at the word fool, but just realize that there's 3 Hebrew words behind that translation in many cases. Although one of them is by far the most predominant Hebrew word. But anyway, let's look at a few verses. We're going to look at a whole bunch of verses tonight. And I'm going to ask you guys to be helping me out in learning what these verses say about the fool. So be prepared to do some talking. But look with me at chapter 17, Proverbs 17. We're going to see several verses in chapter 17. My fingers are so cold I can barely turn these pages. But in chapter 17, look at verse 10. A rebuke goes deeper into one who has understanding than 100 blows into a fool. What's the point of that verse? What do we learn about a fool in that verse?
He doesn't take rebuke. He doesn't listen to it.
Doesn't take rebuke, right? 100 blows from a whip or something or a rod might have more effect than a rebuke to a fool. Look at verse 12. Let a man meet a bear robbed of her cubs rather than a fool in his folly. What's the point of that verse?
I don't know, but I sure wouldn't want to meet a bear robbed of her cubs.
So when you see a bear robbed of her cubs, what do? You run the other way, or you hide, you climb a tree, you get away, right? So isn't that the point here? If you see a fool coming, it usually means trouble. So get out of the way, right? Avoid that person. Verse 16. Why is there a price in the hand of a fool to buy wisdom when he has no sense? Do we have any other translations on that?
Yes.
Read yours.
Why does a fool have money in his hand with no intention of buying wisdom?
Yeah, good. Oliver, what your translations say?
Why is there a price in the hand of a fool to acquire wisdom when he has no heart of wisdom?
Yeah, that's closer to the meaning, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
ESV says, why should a fool have money in his hand to buy wisdom when he has no sense?
Yeah. See, a fool has money in his hand to acquire or buy wisdom, but it's not going to do him any good. The point of this, I take it, is that a fool thinks that he can buy wisdom. He can get it cheap, over the counter, so to speak, rather than realizing that it takes hard work. The fool doesn't want to do the hard work, see? So he wants to get it easy, right? Realizing that that's foolish to want to get it easy, right? If he can't buy it with money and get it over the counter, so to speak, then he's not going to get it at all, right? Anyway, look at verse 16. Same chapter. Oh, that's the one we just read. I'm sorry. Verse 24. Skip down to verse 24. Wisdom is in the presence of the one who has understanding, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. So notice the first part of that may help us. Wisdom is in the presence of the one who has understanding. A person who has understanding, and a person who wants wisdom, and maybe he already has a little bit of it, he can see wisdom when it's in front of him, right? But the fool, he can't see it. He's always looking elsewhere, right? His mind is on other things. His mind is wandering around. He doesn't see the wisdom that's right in front of him that he should see, but doesn't because his mind is on the pursuit of other things that aren't wisdom, right? So those are some of the things we learned there. But now turn to chapter 10. Keep your hand there in chapter 17. We're going to come back to chapter 17 in just a minute. But I've got these verses, some of these verses grouped kind of semi-thematically. But back in chapter 10, look at verse 1. Janet, read chapter 10, verse 1.
The Proverbs of Solomon, a wise man maketh a glad father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother.
All right, hold that thought. Go back to chapter 17. And Rhonda, how about verse 21?
A man fathers a fool to his own sorrow. The father of a fool has no joy.
Okay. And then, Oliver, how about verse 25?
A foolish son is a vexation to his father and a bitterness to her who gave birth to him.
Yeah, your translation says vexation to his father. Mine says grief, right? Either way. What's the point of all those verses together? They're all very much saying the same thing, right? What's the point of those verses? What do we learn about the fool there? Didn't think that'd be a hard question.
Follow the fifth commandment.
That's certainly an implication, right? And what's the fifth commandment?
They're not honoring their parents.
Honoring your father and mother, right? But yeah, that's right. But a fool is someone who brings grief to his parents, right? Parents grieve over children who don't have any wisdom, right? Because they're always getting into trouble, right? Always doing things to their hurt and to the hurt of other people, including their parents, right?
It'd be hard to run the other way to your own kids.
Well, that's exactly part of the issue, right? You can't. Parents love their children, even their foolish ones, right? But they're brought to grief because of that. So I think the point of those verses, at least some of them, is don't be a fool so you don't hurt your parents, right? If you can avoid being a fool, right? All right, skip over to chapter 26. Chapter 26.
Okay, Kenny? I think I'm still having trouble with your definition of foolish.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a moral foolishness, not just unintelligent.
Right. That doesn't mean there's not in some cases, a lack of intelligence. But as we're going to see in a few minutes with one or two verses we're going to look at, that lack of intelligence is itself culpable, right? It's something that doesn't have to be, right?
Okay, so they
People
can
can be
gain.
smart, but
Do stupid things, or they can be smarter than they are because they don't take advantage of their gifts, right? So, yeah.
They don't take into account the consequence, or they don't care about the consequences.
That's exactly right. Yep, that's good. So hold that thought. We'll come back to it, Rhonda. But look in chapter 26. And I'm going to read several verses in a row, 7 through 11, in fact. Listen to this. Like the legs which are useless to the lame, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Like one who binds a stone in a sling, so is he who gives honor to a fool. Like a thorn which falls into the hand of a drunkard, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Like an archer who wounds everyone, so is he who hires a fool or who hires those who pass by. Like a dog that returns to its vomit is a fool who repeats his folly. Several things in those verses, right? But there are a couple of them that jump out at me. Notice, let's go back to verse 7 again. Like the legs which are useless to the lame, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools. What's the point there? You got this whole book of Proverbs, Nicholas, right? You hand it to the fool to read. What's going to happen? He won't understand it. It's going to be like water off a duck's back, in one ear and out the other, right? He's not going to understand it, and he probably doesn't care, right? There's a second proverb, verse 9, like a thorn which falls into the hand of a drunkard, so is a proverb in the mouth of a fool. In other words, it's not going to help, right? Yeah.
Oh, the drunkard's not going to feel it.
He's not going to feel it, and a proverb is he's not going to feel it. Good point. That's a good way of looking at it. Yep. Yeah, the drunkard won't feel it. He's numb to the pain, right? But then, but what about verse 8? Like one who binds a stone in a sling, so is he who gives honor to a fool.
Oh.
What do you do with a stone in a sling? Spin it around, or in a slingshot, right? And then what happens to the stone? It goes away. You throw it away. You get rid of it, so to speak, right? So in the same way, if you give honor to a fool, you're just throwing it away. Just throwing your honor away. You're just wasting your time.
My thing
Yeah.
says a stone bound in a sling would not release. You could harm the person using the sling.
Okay.
Kind of reminds me of those funny nunchuck
Oh, yeah, maybe so, yeah.
guys.
Your translation may be reading something into the text, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know the Hebrew behind all this, but that could be a good, right translation.
It says a modern equivalent is jamming a cork in a gun barrel.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. But anyway, the bottom line is it's useless, right? It's a waste of time. And what about I love verse 10. Like an archer who wounds everyone, so is he who hires a fool or who hires those who pass by. If you hire a fool to work for you, it's like you're wounding people, right? Because he's going to wind up hurting people, right? If you hire a fool to work for your electric company, right? And that fool goes to wire their house, right? Your house is going to be burning down, Nicholas, next week.
That would be shocking.
That would be shocking, yeah.
First floods now burning down.
Yep, that's right. And then verse 11, like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly. What's the point there? Don't dogs return to their vomit? Have you ever seen that? It's disgusting, right? They throw it up, their vomit, and they go and they lick it back up. A fool, the point is, of course, that a fool just keeps doing the same foolish stuff. He doesn't learn. Right? All right, chapter 12. Look at chapter 12. And Nicholas, how about verse 16? Chapter 12, verse 16.
The vexation of a fool is known at once, but the prudent ignores insult.
All right. So what is that saying about a fool in verse 16? My translation reads, a fool's anger is known at once, but a prudent man conceals dishonor. So why is a fool's anger known at once? He acts without thinking, right? It's on his sleeve, so to speak, right? He can't hold his anger in. Right? He can't hold it in check. He lets it out. Exactly. Similar notion in chapter 20. Turn over to chapter 20. Zach, how about verse 3? Chapter 20, verse 3.
It is a glory for a man to conceal poor, but any ignorant fool will break out in deceit.
So what's the point there? Fools like to argue, right? They get into arguments. They're quick to quarrel. They're all pointing at you, Oliver.
I can't spoke to Max, but I've seen you arguing something.
Might have to have a talk about that. But they're quarrelsome, you see. All right? They're quarrelsome. All right, chapter 27. Flip over to 27. Janet, back to you. How about verse 3, 27:3?
Chapter what?
27.
Verse 3.
Verse 3.
A stone is heavy and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both.
Yeah. I like that translation. My translation is not easy to understand, but the provocation of a fool is heavier than both of them, it says. I looked up another translation. I forget which one it was. It says the aggravation of a fool. But yours is getting at it, I think. Read that again, Janet.
A stone is heavy and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both.
Yeah. So again, they're quick-tempered. Their wrath is on their sleeve. They can't hold their anger in. And you don't want to be around them because you know that anything can set them off.
They zap your energy.
And they zap your energy. They provoke you,
Easier
right?
to carry a stone.
Easier to carry a stone than to tolerate a fool. All right, flip over to chapter 29. Rhonda, how about 29 verse 9? 29 verse 9.
If a wise man goes to court with a fool, there will be ranting and raving, but no resolution.
Same thing. It's all about the fact that they rage and they anger. They don't use reason. They just use emotion. Right? All right. Back to chapter 1. All the way back to chapter 1 now. Another theme. Proverbs chapter 1. And Oliver, how about verse 7?
The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Ignorant fools despise wisdom and
So what does a fool do there? According to verse 7? How does it describe a fool? They despise wisdom. They don't like wisdom. They don't want it. Right? Chapter 10. Chapter 10, verse 8. Nicholas, how about that? Chapter 10, verse 8.
The wise of heart will receive commandments, but a babbling fool will come to ruin.
A babbling fool. Right? Go back to that verse part of that. Read that whole verse again. Start off again. The wise of heart.
The wise of heart will receive commandments, but a babbling fool will come to ruin.
So a wise person receives commandments. I think the idea is God's commandments, right? But maybe even the commandments of righteous people or righteous rulers, right? Maybe that counts too. But a babbling fool will be ruined. So you got to keep that contrast in mind, right? The babbling fool, he likes to talk, but he won't receive instructional commandments. He won't listen to God's commands, right? All right, that was chapter 10, verse 8, right? All right, how about chapter 12? Zach, how about chapter 12, verse 15?
The way of the ignorant fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man is he who listens to counsel.
A wise person listens to counsel, but the foolish person what?
Listens to advice.
What's that?
Listens to advice.
The foolish person won't.
They themselves are wise.
They think they're wise in their own eyes, so they don't have to get counsel from anybody else, right? Very good. One more verse, chapter 15, verse 5. 15, verse 5. A fool rejects his father's discipline, but he who regards reproof is sensible. But notice again, the fool, his father might try to discipline him, might even does discipline him, but the fool doesn't receive it well and doesn't learn from it, right? So, adding it all up so far, the fool is someone who hasn't got the patience or concern for seeking wisdom. He's stubborn and obstinate. He can't be corrected. He won't listen to or won't take seriously a rebuke. Right? Can't turn my own pages. He always thinks he's right, so he doesn't think he needs counsel and won't look for counsel. He's quarrelsome and unrestrained in his anger. He aggravates and provokes others. He talks a lot, won't shut up right? He's wise in his own eyes. He mocks at sin. He's morally insolent, right? He's a disappointment to and causes grief to his parents, right? All of that. But you know what? There's something worse about a fool that actually explains all these other things. Look back at chapter 1 again. Verse 7. Oliver already read this for us a minute ago, but let's don't forget the first part. I focused on the second part a while ago. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. But then fools despise that, right? Fools despise wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but fools hate wisdom. Which means they also despise the fear of the Lord, you see. The psalmist puts it this way in Psalm 14:1. The fool says in his heart, what?
There is no God.
There is no God. Well, there are 3 other ways in the book of Proverbs, at least 3 other ways, that the fool can be characterized besides using the word fool in all these contexts that we looked at, right? There are 3 other terms I want to draw your attention to or concepts that underscore different types of foolishness. The first of these is the simple. The simple. In an earlier lesson, I told you that the simple person is the naive person. Y'all remember that? I was talking about that? The naive person. The naive person is the gullible person. The one who is easily deceived or misled, right? So look with me at chapter 14.
And how are you comparing them with the foolish person?
These are just different types of foolishness. The book of Proverbs describes the fool using the word fool, right? Every verse we looked at before has the word fool in it. But there are other terms that are used that are not translated fool from the Hebrew that are also types of foolishness,
Okay,
right?
but a naive person could be morally pure.
Yeah, well, hang on. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
All right, just you're always reading my mind and jumping ahead, or not reading my mind and jumping ahead. But the naive person is the gullible person who's easily misled. And so in chapter 14, verse 15, Janet, how about that? 14:15.
The simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going.
All right, you see how the fool there, the word naive in my translation, what does your word have?
Simple.
Yeah, simple. That's the word in the King James and other translations. Mine says naive, but that's the same thing, right? And so you see how there's gullibility there, right? The naive or simple person, what?
Believes everything.
Believes everything, right? They believe everything. You ever have somebody rebuke you for saying, do you believe everything you read, right? In the paper or whatever it is, right? This is the person that will believe everything, right? He's gullible. But this comes back to Rhonda's point a moment ago. There's a moral dimension to being simple or naive. Most of us start out in life being naive. Most of us do, right? But we can grow out of it by gaining wisdom, right? But a person who doesn't grow out of it displays what Derek Kidner in his commentary refers to as willful irresponsibility. And that's where the moral dimension comes in. Being naive isn't by itself immoral, but it is if you don't try to overcome it and don't care about overcoming it, right? So with that in mind, look back at chapter 1 again, verse 32. Rhonda, read that for us. Chapter 1, verse 32. And then, Oliver, I'm going to ask you to look up chapter 14, verse 18. We were just in chapter 14, weren't we? 14, 18. Chapter 1, verse 32, Rhonda.
For the turning away of the inexperienced will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them.
Notice that the fool there is called complacent. And in the first part of that verse, there's the naive, right?
Inexperienced.
The inexperienced, what yours says inexperienced?
Mine
My-
says simple.
Yours says simple, mine says naive. So we're right back to the same concept, right? And what is it that will kill the naive?
The turning away.
The turning away, or my translation says waywardness. What does yours say, Janet?
The turning away.
Turning away. Nick, what do you got? Turning away. What you're reading the New King James?
English.
ESV? Okay. What do you got, Oliver? Oh, you got a different verse, Nick. Zach. You got the LSB? Okay. Well, waywardness or turning away has to do, either translation has to do with following the wrong path, morally, right? And that's what a naive person does if he's not working to overcome his naivete, right? All right, Oliver, how about chapter 14, verse 18?
The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge.
The simple inherit folly, right? They inherit it. A person who's simple and doesn't want to become wise and doesn't try to become wise is like he's inherited his folly. It's like that's just part of his nature, right? And folly is a path to destruction, right? According to Derek Kidner, the locus classicus of the simple is found in chapter 7. Look at chapter 7. It's a whole bunch about the simple in chapter 7. In fact, I'm going to read the whole chapter. Bear with me. Chapter 7, verse 1. My son, keep my words and treasure my commandments within you. Keep my commandments and live, and my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister. And call understanding your intimate friend, that they may keep you from an adulteress. Keep that as a theme that's going to be starting right here. From the foreigner who flatters with her words. For at the window of my house I looked out through my lattice, and I saw among the naive, you see it? The simple, right? You see that? Verse 7. I saw among the simple and discerned among the youths a young man lacking sense, passing through the street near her corner. And he takes the way to her house. In the twilight, in the evening, in the middle of the night, and in the darkness. And behold, a woman comes to meet him, dressed as a harlot and cunning of heart. She is boisterous and rebellious. Her feet do not remain at home. She is now in the streets, now in the squares, and lurks by every corner. So she seizes him and kisses him, and with a brazen face she says to him, I was due to offer peace offerings. Today I have paid my vows. Therefore I have come out to meet you, to seek your presence earnestly, and I have found you. I have spread my couch with coverings, with colored linens of Egypt. I have sprinkled my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us drink our fill of love until morning. Let us delight ourselves with caresses. For my husband is not home. He has gone on a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him. At the full moon he will come home. With her many persuasions she entices him. With her flattering lips she seduces him. Suddenly he follows her as an ox goes to the slaughter, and as one in fetters to the discipline of a fool, until an arrow pierces through his liver, and a bird hastens to the snare. So he does not know that it will cost him his life. Now therefore, my sons, listen to me, and pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For many are the victims she has cast down, and numerous are all her slain. Her house is the way to Sheol. That's the grave or hell, right? Descending to the chambers of death. In this whole chapter, Kidner writes that the simple, quote, is seen at his most typical, aimless, inexperienced, drifting into temptation. You see that in the story? Right? Indeed, almost courting it, right? The simple is no half-wit. He is a person whose instability could be rectified, but who prefers not to accept discipline in the school of wisdom. End quote. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, in Korea? Seoul, Korea. Yeah. Yeah, don't go there. Sheol is worse than Seoul, Korea. Trust me.
Like the simple, you use it young and old. The simple is young person, and then they turn into the fool because they don't.
That's right. In that context, yes. But this naive person in chapter 7 is somebody who could avoid becoming the fool if he listens to the call of wisdom. But if they don't, they're going to wind up in the grave. Right? You go into the house of the harlot, the adulteress, and you might come out with a disease, right? Or her husband might track you down and kill you, right? Or whatever. Or this temptation that you give into here might lead you to give into other temptations later that will be even more destructive, you see. So the naive person is the person who's in danger, needs to get out of danger by becoming wise. But if you don't want it, you won't get it. Right? All right, so we have the simple as another way of looking at foolishness. Secondly, there's the scoffer or the scorner. What's a scoffer? You heard that word?
Girls.
What's that?
Mean girls.
Mean girls? You're going to have to help me out here. What do you mean?
Like the girls that, like
Bullies.
Like bullies, okay. They can be bullies, yeah. But they're scoffers are also people who mock things,
Okay,
right?
The
Right?
Simpsons. They make fun of everything.
Oh, well, yeah. Scoff, yeah, no doubt. You mean the TV show does?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But a scoffer is somebody that makes fun of things, usually makes fun of good things, right? Scoffs at morality, right? Scorns the good and the righteous. Looks down on them, right? Goody two-shoes, right? Look at chapter 9, verses 7 and 8. Rhonda, how about that? Chapter 9, verses 7 and 8.
The one who corrects a mocker will bring dishonor on himself. The one who rebukes a wicked man will get hurt. Don't rebuke a mocker, or he will hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you.
In my New American Standard Translation, it uses scoffer instead of mocker, but see, there's a connection between those ideas, right? So, what does that say about the scoffer or the mocker? What do you learn there about the mocker? What's that?
Do not reprove.
Why not? Why not?
He'll hate you. So-
He's going to hate you, right? He's not going to take your criticism, your constructive criticism, as a good thing, right? He's going to respond to it negatively. He's going to get his dander up, right? Any other thoughts on that?
Well, the Psalms 1 has talking about the mocker.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, yeah. And how God's going to mock them back. Yep. I'm going to come back to that thought.
So whoever corrects them gets abused.
Exactly. You correct the fool, you correct the scoffer, you're going to just get abuse back, right? And then chapter 13, flip over there real quick. Chapter 13, verse 1. 13:1. Oliver, you got that?
A wise son accepts his father's discipline, but a scoffer does not listen to it.
Same idea. Not even from his father, right? Not even from his parents will he accept rebuke, right? So they're incorrigible. The scoffer, the mocker is an incorrigible person. That means can't be corrected, right? Look at chapter 21. Chapter 21. And Nicholas, how about verse 24? 21:24.
Scoffer is the name of the arrogant, haughty man who acts with arrogant pride.
Yeah. So notice the word scoffer there is listed alongside the word proud, haughty, right? Insolent pride. Insolent means somebody who an insolent person is somebody who attacks goodness, right? And scorns goodness, right? Chapter 22, verse 10. Zach, how about that? 22, verse 10.
Drive out the scoffer, strife for the while. Even contention and disgrace will cease.
Okay. So what are we told to do there?
Drive them out.
Drive out the scoffer. Don't tolerate these kind of people, right? Don't put up with them, right? And for good reasons, right? Because they're not going to do you any good or anybody else any good. How about chapter 29? Chapter 29, verse 8. Janet, how about that? Chapter 29, verse 8.
Scornful men bring a city into a snare, but wise men turn away wrath.
Okay. That's an interesting translation. Mine says, scorners set a city aflame. What do you got, Rhonda, in yours?
Mockers inflame a city.
Inflame a city, yeah.
Scoffers.
Or scoffers. But I'm more concerned about the verb, right? What did yours say again?
Bring it into a snare.
Bring it into a snare or a trap. Yours inflames it. That could be like inflame it emotionally or something, right? Or stir it up, maybe into a riot, maybe. My translation seems to indicate a literal setting it on fire, right? But that could be symbolic or metaphorical, I suppose, right? But I think no matter which translation you go with, the point is that scoffers bring trouble. They cause destruction, right? And they're dangerous people, right? They're troublemakers. They are a bad influence, you see. All right. Let me wrap up the scoffer with a couple of verses. Look at chapter 19 real quick. Chapter 19, verse 29. Judgments are prepared for scoffers, and blows for the back of fools. So you see the connection there between being a fool and being a scoffer, right? They're connected. And it says judgments are prepared for them. Scoffers usually get judged by somebody. Most importantly, by God. With that in mind, flip back to chapter 3. It says judgments are prepared for scoffers or scorners. But in chapter 3, Rhonda, this takes me to the thought you had about the psalm a moment ago. But in chapter 3, verse 34, it says, though he, the he here is God, if you go back to the previous verse, the Lord, though he, the Lord, scoffs at the scoffers, yet he gives grace to the afflicted. There's some good news in that verse, but I'm focusing on the scoffers, right? What does God do to the scoffers?
He scoffs at them.
He scoffs at them. That's something you don't want. If God scoffs at you, you're doomed, right? But God scoffs at scoffers, you see. At scoffers. All right, I got just a few minutes left, but I want to wrap this up with one more concept connected very closely to foolishness in the book of Proverbs, and that is the concept of the sluggard, right? I just realized that all three of these started with S, didn't they? The simple, the scoffers, and the sluggard. They all start with S. I'm not sure why that's the case, but there you go. What's a sluggard?
Lazy.
A lazy person, right? It's a lazy person. A really lazy person. Look at chapter 6. Chapter 6 tells us all about the sluggard. Look at verses 6 through 11. Chapter 6. Go to the ant, O sluggard. Observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief, officer, or ruler, prepares her food in the summer and gathers her provision in the harvest. How long will you lie down, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest? Your poverty will come on you like a vagabond, and your need like an armed man. How is the sluggard described in those verses? Somebody who lies down, right? Rather than doing what? Rather than working, right? Notice, a little sleep, a little slumber. In my translation, that's in quotation marks. The sluggard says to himself, just a little sleep. Just one more little nap. But then 2 hours later, they wake up and the day's gone, right?
That's you like every day.
That's like me, yeah. Yeah, usually after I've been at work for 12 hours or more, right? But anyway, but I'm not saying I don't have some sins to confess. But you get the idea, right? So there is a person who puts things off, right? Who puts a premium on rest rather than work. Nothing wrong with resting after a hard day's work. That's not a bad thing. But resting instead of working, that's a bad thing, right? Postponing your work. Yes? Oh. So what is the fate of the lazy man? Or a person who remains lazy? Poverty. Destruction. Right? Starvation. Right? Because you're not going to get your crops planted. Your harvest brought in. Right? What should he do then? What should the sluggard do to avoid that fate? according to verse 6.
Be like the ant.
Be like the ants. Go and learn a lesson from the ants. They work hard. They don't even have a master whipping them to keep their work going, right? They look ahead to the future. They prepare their food in the summer. They gather their provisions for the harvest, right? They're prepared. They make preparations. And they work hard. Exactly right. Look at chapter 12. We're almost done. Chapter 12, verse 24. The hand of the diligent will rule, but the slack hand, or the sluggard's hand, will be put to forced labor. What's the point there? That can be taken in a couple of ways that may be overlaps, right? Janet, you're about to say something.
The ones that work usually lead.
Okay.
The leaders.
They often do, that's right. And their work, it may be hard, but it may be not as hard as it could be. Right? If you ever put something off to the last minute and it was harder to do, right? You had to work harder to get it done, and it wasn't done as well as it might have otherwise been done, right? Because you put it off, right? So the sluggard, I take this to mean a couple of different things. Maybe two possible things, I mean. If you are lazy and you're reduced to poverty, like the verse we looked at before, you're going to wind up being in debt. And in this culture, in this ancient culture, being in debt meant being a slave, right? So it could have something to do with that. Or it could have to do with just having to work a lot harder than you would have otherwise had to work in order to eke by a living that could have been easier if you had made better preparations.
Or if you steal something, then you get put in prison and you
Or
get a chain gang.
yeah, that's even worse. That's right. That's right. Same chapter, look down at verse 27. A lazy man does not roast his prey, but the precious possession of a man is diligence. So what's it saying there about the lazy man, the first part? The lazy man does not roast his prey. You go and you catch, you catch a rabbit, right? The lazy man.
You got to skin it.
You got to skin it. You got to cook it, right? But the lazy man's too lazy to cook his food. So what's going to happen to his food? If you don't cook it, what? It's going to mold. It's going to spoil. Exactly right. So he doesn't roast his prey. So even what he catches to eat is going to go to waste, right? Okay, again, it's another sign of poverty and starvation, right? All right, one last verse, chapter 15. Proverbs 15, verse 19. The way of the lazy is a hedge of thorns, but the path of the upright is a highway. Rhonda, what's your translation on that one?
A slacker's way is like a thorny hedge, but the path of the upright is a highway.
I think this verse is kind of hard to understand what's being gotten at, but Kidner in his commentary tells us that the key is to look at the contrast with the upright. Here, the sluggard, the lazy man, is being contrasted with somebody who's upright, somebody who's righteous, right? Which suggests here, as Kidner says anyway, I think he's probably right about this, that the lazy person is dishonest. So there's a moral dimension to it, right?
My translation said a level highway.
A level highway. I like that. But the lazy person is deceitful. Doesn't he have to be? I got a funny illustration of this that Oliver and me and Rhonda are familiar with, but some of y'all might not be. We've been recently watching reruns occasionally of the old Sanford and Son TV show, right? You ever seen that, Janet?
Just happened to watch it last night.
Last night?
I've watched it forever, and my husband turned it on for some
We haven't either. For ages and ages, till about, 6 months or so ago, we started watching reruns. Sanford and Son, have you ever seen this show? Yeah, have you seen it? Yeah. It's about this, Red Fox plays this junkyard owner in Los Angeles. He's got a son named Lamont. But Fred is lazy, right? And every time Lamont says, come help me move this bathtub I just got into the junkyard, right? That we can sell at the next auction or whatever. And Fred says, I can't help you. I got my arthritis. Right? course, he's lying, right? Right before that scene, he's using his hands just right, doing all kinds of things he likes doing. But when it comes time to help unload the truck, his arthritis, right? That's a funny illustration, but you get the point, right? The lazy person winds up being dishonest because he's avoiding things. He's trying to deceive other people, make them think he's not lazy when he is. All right. Any questions or comments on the fool tonight? I'm sure there's a lot more that could be said.